are back with comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. I was just reading an article out of the UK. Some teacher, a 33-year-old teacher, had sex with a student, 15-year-old student. So female teacher, male student. And, I've never really been too concerned about that. I mean, if you think about it, it is fucked up. It's probably just as fucked up as the other way, a 35-year-old dude fucking a 15-year-old girl. But I just remember being 15, and I tell you what, I would have given anything to fuck any of my teachers. I didn't even have any good-looking teachers. And wanting to fuck one of your teachers goes for every single guy I know. There isn't a guy in the fucking world, I would say, that hasn't wanted to bang one of their teachers. If you ask any guy, did you want to fuck one of your teachers when you were 15? They'll be like, yes, all of them. Even the gross ones, ask them. I don't know how girls feel. Do girls have crushes on their teachers? I suppose you did. That would make sense. But something seems much more predatory about a 35-year-old dude banging one of his Year 9 students than a female teacher banging one of her Year 9 students. I know that's hypocritical, but that's just how I feel. That's how it is. Where I grew up, there was so much dodgy shit going on like that. Like older dudes already out of high school going out with girls younger than I was. There was one guy, Smitty. Fucking Smitty. I don't even know what he was doing hanging around with us. We were 16, 17. He was 24. Do you know what type of fucking loser you have to be a 24-year-old hanging around with 17-year-olds? Anyway, he was hanging around with us, and one of our other mates had a girlfriend. He was younger than me, and his girlfriend was 2 years younger than him. So she was 14 and he was 16. And he went out with her for about a year. And then after a year, they broke up, and Smitty, the 24-year-old, ended up going out with this girl who was 15. 24 and 15. This isn't in the 80s. This was early 2000s. Smitty stopped hanging out with everyone because he knew how fucked up that was. I don't know how that got fucking passed. Anyway, they're still together, they're married, and they have 3 kids now. So I don't know what happens with that. Is that still fucked? I don't know. Still sounds fucked to me thinking about it. Another guy we used to hang out with. He was the drug dealer in town. Lee, he was about 4 or 5 years older than me. So when I was 17, he was 22. He started hooking up with my brother's friend, and my brother's 2 years younger than me, and she was a year younger than my brother. So she was in year 8. So she was 14, he was 22, 23, and the drug dealer in town. And an ugly cunt too. And I just remember looking at them going, that's not fucking right. If I was her dad, I would kill this motherfucker. Why isn't anyone fucking him up? Anyway, they're married too. They've got 2 kids. So I don't know how to process that. There must be an element of it that they got in so early they brainwashed these girls. The girls are so young, they don't even know what the world is without these fuckers. And now they're together forever. It always blew my mind. This is just in about 4 square blocks of my town as well. This is like about 12 houses. Another guy, Ben, he was going out with this girl. The girl was in year 8 or 9. I think she was about 13, 14. He was older than me. He was about 20, 21 when I was about 17. Anyway, they were going out for ages. She was obviously still living with her mum, so they would hang out all the time at her mum's place. And then eventually, he started fucking the mum and then had a baby with the mum. There was so much of that shit. Does it still go on? I have no fucking idea. I assume it does, but there was fucking always some 22-year-old dude with a car hanging out at the high schools. That's small town life, baby. You hit 18, you buy a Ford Falcon or a Holden Gemini, and you head down to the high school at 3:30 p.m. So fucked. Another guy we grew up with, his house was like the bong house. It was a disgusting, dank, filthy, depressing shithole. And his mum would let everyone just smoke weed and do drugs in the house. There were other houses where parents let you do all that shit. And those houses were cool. Mine was a little bit like that. But this particular house, it was just fucking gross. I hated going there. But he was a few doors down from one of my good friends, and one of my good friends used to go there all the time. Anyway, his mum would sit there pulling cones, smoking bongs with everyone. She ended up dating... No, it was fucking Ben. It was Ben. She fucking dated Ben. She dated the guy who ended up having a kid with his girlfriend's mum. Fucking incest. So yeah, he dated her. Then they fucking broke up. She's like in her 50s as well. She ended up banging like 5 of the dudes, of the kids. 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. A varying age of young kids. And the sister, who was in her 20s as well, she ended up banging everyone. I wasn't included in any of this shit. I hated that fucking place. There was some seedy vibe in there. But she gave a couple of my mates their first blowjobs, so they have fond memories of her. But it was just like that fucking everywhere. This crew of freaks weren't my fucking close friends. These are just people in town. They were mainly just the drop kicks in town. You would go over there every now and then, or a lot. It was just a fucking seedy vibe. But anyway, back to the teacher thing. I will tell you this. I probably shouldn't, but I will. Anyway, there was a teacher at my school, and all the students sort of caught wind that she had hooked up with a couple of students before. There was no evidence, there was no proof. She was kind of hot. She wasn't that old. I think she was maybe like 24, 25. Hot for a teacher, and hot for a teacher in our town. She was the number one. Anyway, this would have been in year 12. I would have been 17, and me and my mate Chris Ashcroft were at the Portsea pub on the Mornington Peninsula, and we'd stayed till closed, and we had to get back to Dramana, which is about a 40 minute drive. It's a fucking monster walk. We'd done it a couple of times, but our plan was just to hitchhike back. It was about 12 or 1. I can't remember the time, but we'd been walking for fucking ages, and no one had picked us up. We're just stumbling down the highway, thumbs out. This car pulls to the side of the road. We go up to the passenger window. There's someone in the passenger seat, but the driver, we know the driver. It's a friend of ours. His name was, let's call him Nick. That was his real name. Anyway, we're like, fuck yeah, man. He's heading back to Dramana. He's like, yeah, that's where I'm going. So we're like, fuck yeah, loving this. Jump into the back seat. I hop in first, and I look up, and I'm like, what the fuck? And it was my teacher in the back seat of Nick's car. I'm like, hey, miss, what should I call her? I'm not fucking definitely not using her real name. Hi, Miss Hooper. Let's say Hooper. Hi, Miss Hooper. What the fuck are you doing here? And I'm drunk. I'm trying to get my bearings. I'm like, what the fuck is she doing in the back of Nick's car? And then I realize, I'm like, oh, fuck. Nick's been hooking up with her. And Nick is a guy you'd want to hook up with. Even at like 18, he was 6'4", 6'5", good looking, like super good looking, built like a brick shit house, 6-pack, everything. He was a stud, a fucking thoroughbred stud. And so I sit next to Miss Hooper, and my mate Chris sits on the other side of me. And I'm like, well, I'm here. I might as well make a play. I've got to make a play, don't I? Fuck Nick. Fuck Nick. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, when am I ever going to get the opportunity to pull a fucking move on my fucking teacher again? I'm just about to leave high school. I got like 3 months left, 4 months left. This is my only opportunity. So I'm like, all right, let's ease into this. So I start talking to Miss Hooper, and I just gently put my arm on her leg, and she just gently pushes it off. And so I'm like, all right, yeah, that's fine. What else was she going to do? She wasn't going to let me leave it there. Definitely not the first go. And so we all start talking. My teacher starts saying the only guy she's ever wanted to hook up with at high school is Nick, the guy driving the car. And he actually, to be fair, to be honest, he was a year out of high school. He had finished high school. But later on, I found out he had hooked up with her before. Anyway, this isn't about Nick. This is about me. So I go back. Everyone's a little bit more comfortable. I'm cracking jokes. And I just put my hand on her leg again. And this time she doesn't move it. I'm like, all right, that's basically like first base. I'm happy here. But I wasn't really happy there. So I left it there until it felt like I could move it a little bit further down the road. Jesus Christ, do I need to talk about this? Anyway, I'm fucking in it now. So I'm like, all right. I might slide it down a little bit further down the leg. It was around the knee area. So I'm like, all right, We'll get it to the thigh and we'll see what's happening. And so I move it to the thigh and there was still no movement. So I'm like, Jesus Christ, I definitely thought she was going to smash my hand away. And then, of course, I had to find out if I could slide it down a little bit further. So I took my fucking chance. I slid it down a little bit further. Still nothing. Still no movement. I'm silent. She's silent. Nick is eyeballing me in the back of the car. I'm just like whistling and looking out the window. So there was no movement. Then I'm like, fuck it. I have to move a little bit further. And so I moved my hand. You know where. Don't be bashful. Just through the jeans though. Fuck, I hate talking about this shit. Anyway, I got to the place where I wanted to go and there was still no pushing my hand away. So I'm like, fuck. And then, really, there's no gentlemanly way to say this. I rubbed between my teacher's legs for about a good fucking 10 minutes without her moving my hand. And that's all I tried. I didn't try anything further. I was like, that's enough. That's enough to get me through the next 14 years. All right, another story I didn't want to fucking tell. Another story I'm going to have to go back and wipe from the history books eventually. So yeah, that's the story of how I gave my teacher at high school a good old-fashioned between the legs rub for about 10 minutes. Is there anything more crass than that? Anyway, that's it. That's it from me tonight. I know the guys are going to like that. The guys are going to love that fucking story. I'm just more concerned about the ladies. What am I talking about? I'll probably get 15 fucking messages tomorrow from women saying, yeah, I fucked my teacher. You pussy. You got a little bit of a rub in the back of the car. No one cares. All right, that's it. If you're enjoying the podcast, share it around with your friends. Thank you very much, and I'll see you the fuck later.